Hello everybody and welcome back to more of our player guide series. My name is Zen and I am going to be bringing you a fairly basic guide today, but it is very important. So we're in the middle of the beginner guides. Some of you advanced players probably haven't gotten anything too important as of the past few guides. However, today you might actually get a little bit of knowledge if you've never heard any of these basic rules in the game before. So with movement and targeting, it's one of those things that if you know what you're doing, then people don't really notice. It's kind of as expected. But if you don't know little details about these things, little things that to make your game more efficient, your gameplay more efficient, then you're going to get yelled at by more experienced players. And the problem with that is they'll never explain to you what is actually going on. So this is my chance to explain to you how to move efficiently within the game and how to move to a point where you're almost moving more efficiently than what the game can actually produce. So let's talk about that a little bit. So as far as just movement goes in general, you have two ways of really doing it. And then you have a combination of two. The first is WAS and D. This is a basic PC gamer thing. It's used in a lot of FPS or RPGs and stuff like that, especially MMO. So W goes forward, S goes backwards, A goes left, and D goes right. But A and D kind of turn your camera left and right. And then you typically have Q and E, which Q would strafe you left and E would strafe you right. That's pretty cool stuff to know. But there is another bit to movement that a lot of people miss out on, which is the mouse. So the mouse actually is able to allow you to move as well. If you hold both mouse buttons down, you can move. That's not an efficient way of doing it, but if you're taking a drink or you're moving something on your desk and you have to get out of something, like you're standing in an attack or someone's chasing you down, then you could use your mouse. And the other thing with that is if you hold down the right mouse button, you suddenly gain camera control. So you can move your camera around your screen and move at the same time. Now this is where the efficient play comes in. However, we'll talk about that in a second, but there are a few base rules we need to establish in order to move forward. So the first thing is that you should never be using S. S makes you move backwards. It just literally your character backs up, and that is the least efficient way to move within the game. You're moving slower than if you would by strafing or moving forward, which isn't good. And then the other thing is you can't really see where the heck you're going. So the way we establish how to get around that, I mean, there are times where you'll need to back up, but you don't want to back up with S. You want to move your camera so that you're facing either left or right, and then just strafe. That way you can see where you're going, you can still see what's behind you. Say you're moving right, you can see what's in front of you to your right, you can see what's behind you to your left, and you're still moving in the same direction you need to go, you're just not moving as slowly as if you would just back up. And the second base rule we need to establish is that you should never really use A or D to turn your camera. We'll talk about how you do use those in movement in a second, but as far as moving your camera is concerned, you never want to be standing still and just hold A or hold D. It'll turn you incredibly slowly, and it's not efficient, especially when you're moving forward and holding A or D. It is just, it kills brain cells when I watch people do this. Instead, what you want to do is you want to hold the right mouse button again to get that camera control, and you just want to spin your camera. You don't want to flip out and turn around and get all lost of where you are. You want to get efficient and precise with your mouse movement, so that way you're flicking your camera right where you need it to be every single time, and that way that allows you to actually do those cool strafe maneuvers rather than having to back up as well. Now, obviously, in order to do that, and this is the more advanced stuff, you need to know what button combinations to be using. So, say you wanted to strafe right, you would hold D and you would hold your right mouse button, and you would flip your camera so that way you're kind of facing where you want to go. A lot of the controlling of where you're going can be done with the mouse and also a generous use of the other keys on your keyboard, and that really comes down to wherever you want to go, and it takes a lot of practice. It's hard to describe. It's just one of those things that when you see it on screen, you can kind of translate it to your keyboard fairly easily, and if you can't, then just go and mess around, moving around a bit, and you'll figure it out fairly quickly. I should also mention really quick that you can also look around by holding left mouse button down and turning your camera. This is helpful for looking what's behind you if you don't want to actually move, or looking to the left and the right. However, it doesn't play a huge part in movement as much as you might imagine, and it is really just to kind of swivel your camera around your character. So the second main point we want to talk about is now targeting, and targeting is again one of those really basic parts of the game. However, it's one of those things that if you know how to do properly, you'll be quicker, and if you're quicker, you'll be able to handle situations a lot better. You'll freak out a whole lot less when you're in an ops group and you've never done it before, basically. That's kind of where we're going here, especially in PvP. You'll be a lot quicker, which makes you a lot better. Being a quick player in PvP does have a huge dramatic effect on skill level. Now, obviously, the first thing you could do to target somebody or something is to left click on it. While you can do that, it's not necessarily the quickest way, but it is usable in a lot of situations. So it's not, you don't want to not use left click. You just want to use it in the situations that it best fits. However, on certain fights, like raid fights, for example, there'll be neutral guys that'll come out that you have to target. A good example is a fight in Terror from Beyond, which is one of the high-level ops, and the guy's name is Operator. Basically, there's these orbs that come out, and you have to click on them, and they're neutral to begin with, but trying to click on them, it's just because they're moving around, it doesn't really give it to you, and that's just the way Star Wars is programmed. They can make that a bit better, but at this point in the game, it is very difficult to actually left-click on them. So one of the things that we do to compensate is we use the tab key on the keyboard. Now, with your hand already controlling your character at WASD, Q and E, well, not S, let's be honest, we don't want you using that, but then you have all of your abilities. If you have a pretty long hand span like I do, I go all the way to 7, so I actually use all the way up to 7 on my keyboard, which your hand gets busy. So getting over to that tab key takes a lot of work, takes a lot of practice, learning how to quickly hit it without causing your gameplay to slow down any. Personally, the finger that I use to hit it is the ring finger, because my pinky is typically using either Control or Shift to do the other functions that I'll have in my key bindings video that I'll show you guys. So you want to get really, fluent with hitting that key as quickly as possible. What tab itself does is it'll target the closest target on the left-hand side of your screen, and you can change the options to this in the options menu. I've shown this in the previous guide video, but the basic thing is what it'll do is it'll target left to right on your screen space, especially if you have that option set, and I would suggest having that option set. Basically, screen space means whatever you can see on your screen, so the tab target won't target things behind you or things that you can't actually see, which is nice. And if you have the option turned on to show next target, it'll have an empty arrow over the next person that your tab target will target, which allows you to kind of get a gauge for who's next if you're scrolling through targets real quick by just pounding that tab key. Now, this can be a benefit, and it could be a huge degradation to your targeting skills, because if you tab target too quickly, you can skip over what you want, and then you have to go through the entire list again. Also, creatures tend to move around, so that list will move about with what is actually coming next in the tab target queue. So you got to be paying attention to the screen as you're tab targeting. That, once again, just like movement, is one of those things that you'll get used to. It's a lot of muscle memory, and it's a lot of just focusing on what is actually going on within your screen space. Overall, though, learning these little things will make you a lot better at the game. You'll get quicker, like I said, and people will not necessarily notice that you've gotten quicker, but they'll respect you because you're doing it. If you're not doing these things, they'll notice and they'll call you out on it. And a lot of the times they're really rude, so we don't want that to happen. So hopefully you guys have gotten a little bit out of this. If you have any questions, I know it's kind of like a weird, kind of in the middle subject that requires a lot of thought process and just doing it to figure out, more so than me teaching you a specific way. And the ways of movement also will kind of change per person based on what actual gear you're using. So on that note, leave any comments in the description below this video and I'll get back to them as soon as possible, especially if you have any really important questions. But on that note, we shall see you guys next time.